Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Nuclear Fuels, Inc. Please note you can submit questions in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome William Sheriff, Chairman of Nuclear Fuels, Inc., which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol NFUNF and on the CSE under the symbol NF. Welcome, William.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate the opportunity and welcome to the audience. Nuclear Fuels, Inc. is a company that's dedicated 100% to in situ exploration and development of uranium resources. The United States is the world's largest consumer of nuclear power and currently imports roughly half of its 47 million pounds a year requirement through the port of St. Petersburg, Russia. So at a time when we're seeing increased use for demand in uranium, we're also seeing geopolitical constraints and concerns over what is a very critical commodity. The United States has a long history in uranium and has been self-sufficient in the past, but like many industries has outsourced its uranium needs to other countries, including Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and others. Currently, with the extremely large buildup of Chinese reactors, this is exacerbating the situation. So there's a keen need, a timely need, and an urgent need for exploration for uranium in the United States. And in situ is the clean way to go. Don't have large open pits, don't have underground openings, no tailings ponds, no pads, etc. Simply done through chemistry of water, and I will show you that as we move on. There are the usual forward-looking statements I will be making. I caution you to read those. We have, as I say, focused on the uranium exploration. The company was set up largely through the efforts of another company, Encore Energy, which is a $600 million market cap company specializing in the development and production of in situ uranium. And in fact, they are our largest shareholder, holding 19.9%. I am the chairman of that company as well, and I'm one of the two board designees to Nuclear Fuels. There's a relationship there in terms of a back-end right on the major flagship property, which is the KC project in Wyoming. Definitely come back and touch on that as we move a bit further through this. But the key here is the company's been trading for about 4 months now. Just recently having received the OTC listing, which has helped our liquidity enormously and opened us up to the U.S. market. We have a 200-hole drill program underway currently at the KC project in Wyoming. Myself and our CEO, Michael Collins, just having returned from there last week, making great progress there. And we've been optimistic to get 40 or 50 holes in this year. We're actually up around 60 at this point. The winter weather is holding off a bit for us, and we're taking advantage of that and making great progress. We are fully funded for our drill program, obviously permitted and well underway. We're one of the few companies, if any others, of our size that have a clear pathway to production, and that is through the back-end relationship with Encore Energy. Assuming that Nuclear Fuels can demonstrate a 10 to 15 million pound deposit, Encore has the right to back into the project, or claw back into the project, if you will, by paying 2.5 times the exploration expenditures incurred by Nuclear Fuels for a 51% interest in the project and a firm commitment to take us to production. That is a very unique aspect of Nuclear Fuels. And of course, all this in the backdrop of growing demand and support for nuclear energy. As you see, talked a little bit about the KC project. What makes it so special? It's the largest exploration play in the United States now. We've got a tremendous database that was uncovered a couple of years ago, consisting of over 3,800 drill holes. These were largely done between 1979 and 1981, right about the time of the 3 Mile Island, which of course shut down all of the exploration in the U.S. and really put a damper on the uranium market. So this project's largely been ignored since then. First company to come in and consolidate the what is now a 33-mile-long trend with a demonstrated existence of over 110 miles of mapped roll fronts Roll fronts are essentially spaghetti-shaped geologic formations where the uranium is occurring right along a boundary in the sedimentary rocks. And through the 3,800 drill holes that are there, we do have 110 miles of mapped roll fronts. These occur in 3 separate formations, which are known to be productive at various places throughout the Powder River Basin in Wyoming. Powder River Basin is the most prolific ISR basin in the U.S., and as such a large project is certainly quite promising. We also have a pipeline of future projects in other jurisdictions, several projects in Wyoming as well as Arizona, and I'll take you through those as well. Here again, 100% focused on in situ projects. A little bit about nuclear and why now. Obviously, I touched on the U.S. being the world's largest producer or consumer, rather, of uranium. It's the only way we can really get to net zero and the leading carbon-free scalable source of energy available in terms of electricity. 20% of the electricity in the U.S. is produced through nuclear power still, and that looks to grow with the advent of small modular reactors. With plant extensions, many of these plants are being extended for an additional 20-year time period, the existing fleet. We're just bringing on 2 brand new reactors in the U.S., the Southern Company at Vogtle 3 and Vogtle 4. Vogtle 3 is commissioned. Vogtle 4 will be in early 2024, marking the first 2 large reactors to come online in the U.S. in some 20 years. Obviously, we can't rely on windmills and solar cells for all of our electricity. Simply put, the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine. Baseload power requires nuclear energy if we're going to have a green world. Also, very interesting to note that nuclear uranium is the most concentrated uranium source or energy source that we have. It takes almost 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas to equal 1 small cylinder of uranium fuel, which is about 3/8 to a ½ inch in diameter and 1 inch long. Also represents the equivalent energy of 1 ton of coal or 120 gallons of oil. So it is a very, very dynamic project or energy source. You're also looking at what has been a very depressed market ever since Fukushima, and the sea change has occurred now with massive support for the nuclear industry, primarily motivated by the continued impressive safety record of the nuclear industry, plus the advent of the small modular reactors. The slide here will show you the domestic production back in 1980, before we began outsourcing at the end of the Cold War, was simply adequate to take care of our needs. So the U.S. does have a rather rich endowment of uranium. It's just been ignored largely for 40 years. So what we're demonstrating now is the very early stages of the nuclear renaissance in the U.S. And as such, nuclear fuels is well positioned to take advantage of this, having the largest exploration play in the U.S. We're also enjoying tremendous bipartisan support in Congress, I should mention. But a little bit on the in situ technique. As I say, most people are viewing uranium as something that's mined. We actually recover it from groundwater as opposed to mining it. Over 60% of the world's uranium is actually produced through the in situ means. And this schematic kind of demonstrates how that works. You have a central well surrounded by 4 other wells in a typical 5-spot arrangement, much like on the face of a dice. And you pump groundwater out of a sandstone that's saturated or an aquifer that has uranium in it. And so you already are in an aquifer exclusion zone that you shouldn't be drinking the water out of. We come in, pump that water out, inject oxygen. That's all we do is put oxygen and a little bit of baking soda to adjust the pH. Pump that down into the formation. The oxygen dissolves the uranium, much as sugar or salt would be in water. We're able to pump that uranium-bearing solution into the processing plant where it's separated in what's much like an industrial water treatment plant. Keeping the uranium, we refortify the groundwater that's now been stripped of the uranium with oxygen, re-inject it, repeat the process over a period of a couple of years, and we're able to recover right around 90% of the uranium in that formation. And so we do leave the groundwater in better condition than when we got there. This is a very efficient, very green, very quick to permit because it's so efficient and green, and very, very easy to handle on the reclamation end, especially when compared to conventional mining. And once we're done, of course, the land and water revert to its original use category once we're complete with the process. Capital structure of nuclear fuels is quite good. We currently have a market cap of just under 30 million Canadian, 47 million shares issued, 0 warrants, I would call your attention to, 2 million warrant options, fully diluted just under 50 million. Here again, the key shareholders, Encore Energy at 19.9%. Their symbol, by the way, is EU on the NYSE American. And management and insiders of nuclear fuels control an additional 10%. I'd also point out that roughly 30% of those shares that are issued are escrowed, so there's no significant overhang in the market. Your board of directors and management, very experienced crew. Myself, I've already spoken about. David Miller, he was previously chief executive of Strathmore, certainly their chief geologist for years, and also was spent many years at Pathfinder and Kojima in charge of their in situ operations, primarily in Wyoming. Gene Spearing joins us with 30 years experience in the business. Actually had worked on the KC project many years ago, and has spent a lot of time in the Western U.S. on a variety of uranium projects. Mike Collins, our CEO, one of the few people that have actually produced uranium in the U.S. He was the only individual, his company Blue Rock Resources, during the last uranium cycle of 2004 to 2008, actually produced from a mine in Utah. And that leadership provides a great deal of insight for the company. Larry Lewhausen, 40 years experience in the business. He has a number of discoveries under his belt. So here again, a very seasoned professional, really aids us at the board level. And Mark Travis, our project manager, getting close to a decade of time spent actually in the field on these projects. One of the younger members of the staff, and instrumental in moving our programs forward. A lot of his experience was gained in a neighboring basin, Gas Hills, so it's pretty applicable to what we're doing. He's doing a great job in the field. As we speak, the rigs are turning. So we've got very aggressive exploration. It's a picture of the rig at the KC project. Here you can see the layout of the Western U.S. with most of our projects. In Wyoming, we have the KC and Boot Heel project, although we're certainly looking for a couple of more, but our major emphasis will be on the KC project, as nothing else really has the size potential for that. It's a real company maker. The Lisbon Valley project in Utah is a non-core asset. It's more of a conventional asset, and it will be on the block. And then we have the Moonshine project, a very significant project in northern Arizona. This is a bit of a close-up of the Wyoming project, which I'll be spending most of the time on. In gray, you can see the Powder River Basin, as I mentioned, the most prolific ISR uranium production area in the U.S. And we're on the western side. The yellow is quite a large project area, extending some 33 miles from northwest to southeast by about 5 miles across. And all the stars in the rest of the basin, the red ones represent actual production centers, licensed facilities for in situ recovery. Nichols Ranch being some 6 or 7 miles from our eastern extremity of our project. All of these, I would point out, whether they're red stars or the green, which are projects that have been developed but not yet put into production, not yet licensed, are on the eastern side of the Powder River Basin, where the beds are quite flat and with a very gentle depth to the west. We're on the western side, and we have pretty much free reign there. I think we're the only major company there on the western side, especially with such a large land position. And you'll be able to see in the next couple of slides coming up that gives us a distinct advantage in terms of being able to reach multiple horizons that are mineralized with uranium. And we'll move through that fairly quickly. You can also see our Bobcat project towards the south, a much smaller project along with the Boot Heel project. These are both in our portfolio. Moving in on what we're actually doing in Wyoming currently, we are drilling actively at the Saddle Zone. You can see about 2/3 of the way to the southeast along our trend, and that's where virtually all of our drilling will go this year. You can note for access the interstate highway on the west side of the project, so accessibility is great. In pink, you have existing in situ recovery plants and operations. These are held by a number of the competitors, including Cameco, the world's largest uranium producer outside of Kazakhstan. We do have, as I mentioned, 3,800 drill holes historically. There's a number of historic resources. They're a bit difficult to see, but they show up as red dots along that trend, and all the black are the roll fronts. Here again, drilling was done on a regional basis back before 3 Mile Island, and we're the first ones to come in and actually concentrate our work on developing resources along these structures that our predecessor company had spent so much work and time developing for us. Got a little over 40 square miles of mineral rights here. Here again, a number of ISR operators I mentioned, 3 different formations, the upper one being the Wasatch, middle one being Fort Union. These are all sandstones, and then into the Lance. And I'll be able to show you a bit more about that as we go. But first off, I want to give you a few of our drill results. One thing nice about uranium, you get your drill results almost immediately after the hole is drilled through gamma probe logging. It's not a direct measurement of uranium, but it's a measurement of the uranium decay product and the radiation from it. And so within literally an hour after drilling a hole, we know what our equivalent U308 grade is. And these are some quite impressive numbers. General rule of thumb is you need better than 0.3 is a grade thickness in order to be considered for inclusion in a well field. That is a series of wells drilled to produce the uranium from the groundwater, as mentioned before. And as you can see, there's some very, very significant numbers there with a couple of 0.9s, et cetera, and very early in the drilling program. So we're quite pleased with what we're seeing so far. And as I say, drilling is continued. This just goes through the first 22 holes, what you're looking at. Here you can see a map. We're obviously drilling in and around a historically identified uranium. We're trying to verify those. We're trying to step out. And in fact, we're also trying to test deeper horizons. So a number of aspects of the current drill program, and so far quite successful. This schematic really tells the whole story. This is an east-west cross-section through the Powder River Basin. It's idealized, but you can see the top 3 formations, as mentioned, the Wasatch, Fort Union, and Lance. Each of these are on the order of 1,000 feet thick. Your economic depth of in situ for commercial extraction is roughly 1,000 feet before it starts to become uneconomic under current conditions. And you can see all of the competitors directly to our east are in the Wasatch Formation, the upper of those. There may very well be uranium at lower levels, but it certainly isn't economic, and the companies haven't gone that far down. On the west side, however, we benefit from having the beds dipping considerably more steeply into the basin. And all 3 formations are known to be mineralized at the surface. And as we follow them down under the water table, we're seeing the roll fronts continue to be mineralized in all 3 of these formations. And just due to geometry, we're able to, with a single 1,000-foot hole, hit any 2 of these formations, just depending on the drill location. And in very unique situations, potentially all 3. So this is how we can have over 110 miles of roll fronts along a 33-mile trend. It's stacked ore bodies, or a correlation to the oil and gas industry would be multiple pay horizons. So here again, very beneficial in terms of our potential economic development. One of the projects that we'll be looking at in the future is the Boot Heel property. This is a little further south in Wyoming. Certainly not our focus this year, and we won't be doing anything on it, but it does have former 43101 resources on it, right approaching 5 million pounds. The grade's a little lower than we're looking at. KC, we've got very good grades at better than 0.1. Industry standards for production in the U.S. range from 0.04 to 0.08, so getting numbers in the 0.1 area is quite good for us. But the permeability and porosity of the sandstone hosting the mineralization at Boot Heel is quite good. And there are a number of factors that make or determine an in situ project to be economic or not. Depth to mineralization is one of the keys, and right now our mineralization that we're finding at KC is only 300 feet. So this project here will be one that would be ideally suited for a joint venture as we move forward. Once again, our concentration for the next couple of years will be almost solely directed at KC. The Moonshine project in Arizona I touched on as being another key project for us. I would also note that Encore's back-end right only applies to the KC project. The rest of these are 100% owned and controlled by Nuclear Fuels. And the Moonshine property, as you can see here, covers about 10 or 11 square miles. Each of the blue sections there are 1 square mile each. The existing historic resource applies only to the dark red solid at the lower part of the screen. We've got outlined very, very good targets that just don't have sufficient drilling yet to go into a resource category along both of the hollowed red trends to the north, as well as additional extensions, both laterally and along trend for all of these. Here again, we have multiple horizons that are mineralized, so a very, very good target. And once again, historic grades of better than 0.1%. We look to be permitting this throughout the year and probably drilling this in the fall of 2024. The company does have a critical minerals or a rare earth project in Labrador. It's also got some extremely high uranium values. This is not on the front burner by any means. Got some pretty special numbers coming out of it. Here again, probably be looking for a joint venture partner on this, but certainly worth mentioning. So our 2023 work plan, KC Wyoming, will be working very, very hard and diligently here until it simply doesn't make sense to fight the winter. Hopefully we'll get 70 or 80 holes out before we take the break for Christmas, and then we'll be back at it next year with multiple drill rigs as we expand along that huge 33-mile long trend. Moonshine Springs, as I mentioned, we'll be working to get a 43-101 compliant resource there with a bit of drilling late next year. And Boot Heel will be prepping it up for joint venture participation and moving it forward in 2024. But KC, and KC are our priorities at the moment, and that's where we're going to be spending all of our time, effort, and resources, as it's the premier exploration project in the U.S. and certainly with the backing of Encore Energy, a great opportunity. I think I pretty well summed it up for you in terms of the investment summary. Be glad to take care of any questions that you might have. Here I'm going to just address a few of these. Our relationship with Encore Energy pretty much started this company, or was influential in its starting rather, because Encore is strictly dedicated towards production. That is, its staff is full of engineers, field engineers, chemical engineers, etc. We do at Encore a bit of exploration at the actual site to increase the resources, but we don't pick up a project that needs a lot of work to put into the pipeline. We'd prefer to partner with others like we have with Nuclear Fuels to develop those, to take the exploration risk, if you will, in exchange for an above average return, and maintain a relationship so that once it is developed, we can bring it into the fold. What is our capital position and how are we situated to fund 2024 programs? Our current drill program is funded. We've raised $7 million privately before listing. And obviously we're chewing through that with the one drill hole, or one drill rig rather. And we would probably be financing sometime in the new year, but not before an awful lot of drill results have come out. So the production timeline in Wyoming brings up a good point. Wyoming and Texas are the two states that you definitely want to be working at in the U.S. because they're both agreement states. And what we mean by agreement states is that the federal government, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, has ceded their regulatory control over the programs, be they exploration or production, and certainly during the permitting stages, to the state government. And while they're working out of the same playbook or the same rule book, the states just simply are far more motivated for economic gain and economic growth than is the federal government. So you can permit a project from exploration into production in Wyoming in probably 3 years or less. Texas is about 6 months quicker. But the rest of the states could be easily up to 6 or 8, possibly even 10 years in terms of being in the federal program for permitting. So Wyoming is a very good place to be. Here again, question as to why KC is so important. I just can't stress enough the size of it. The 110 miles of identified roll front, and virtually no one's had a concentrated work program on the entire district in 40 some years. So it's just flush with opportunity. And we're seeing that being realized now from our drill program with such outstanding early results. Let's see here. We got a few more. Here again, mostly relating to our funding level. And as I say, we're funded for our current program. Obviously, with the results of it being encouraging and providing that they continue to be so, we'll be looking to expand that. Ideally, we'll have 2 or 3 rigs working on this project all of next year. As you might imagine, with a 33-mile long trend and multiple stacked targets, we need to be aggressively drilling this for a couple of years. And one rig is nice, but having 3 rigs turning is probably what we need. And we look forward to being able to do that. One thing that's very different about ISR drilling, and I did touch on this briefly before, in gold or copper, grade is always king. And if you don't have grade, you've got some problems, and grade makes up for all sins, if you will. In uranium, it's a basket of factors, really. And while grade's important because it's always better to start with more, it's certainly not the single most important factor. What is depth to mineralization, because you drill so many holes, typically every 100 feet in a well field, and you drill hundreds and hundreds of holes. A mature well field may have 1,000 drill holes in it. So drilling is your number one expense. And obviously, a 300-foot deep deposit is very nice. It's deep enough to be saturated by the water table, and very, very economically sensible with only a 300-foot drill holes required. Also, on the shallower drilling, you can use PVC for casing instead of steel, so that's ideal. When you have stacked horizons like we do at KC, having your first horizon at 200 to 310 feet, which is the case at the saddle zone, it does allow us the opportunity to go after multiple zones at depth, which is what we've done, and we've been successful, as our news releases report, in actually identifying mineralization in the underlying Fort Union at about 550 to 600 feet. So, in fact, we are looking at the potential for multiple zones actually in the same footprint at the saddle zone and throughout the entire project. So it's a very, very exciting project in a number of aspects, and certainly what got Encore in there to be such a supporter of the company. And I think that would pretty much answer it. Not seeing too many other questions coming in. One question about IRA accessibility for funding in this, and that's something you have to just ask your broker. Can't comment on that. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our audience for their participation, interest, and good questions coming in. And I encourage you to keep your eyes on the company. Feel free to contact the company and investor relations for any updates that we don't provide through the natural flow of news. But should be a very exciting year and future for the company as we move forward, especially centered around the KC project. Thank you very much.